In the dark heart of the American Civil War, when chains still clattered on the decks of Southern ships and the dream of freedom seemed like a horizon forever out of reach, there arose a man whose courage would shatter not just iron shackles, but the very arrogance of the Confederacy. A man who began his life in bondage yet would outwit the masters who sought to own him, steering not only a ship, but his destiny into the tide of history. And his name was Robert Smalls, the slave who stole a Confederate ship, a tale so daring, so impossible, that even now it echoes like a legend, yet it is all true. For Robert was born in 1839 in Beaufort, South Carolina. Raised under the lash of slavery, hired out as a laborer from the age of 12, sent to Charleston, where he worked the docks, the wharves, the streets, and the ships. A boy growing into a man under the shadow of oppression, but all the while learning, watching, absorbing the knowledge of tides, winds, and engines. And on those bustling waters he became skilled as a sailor, a rigger, and eventually a wheelman. Though by law a slave could never be called a pilot, yet every knot tied, every current read, was a step toward a destiny he dared not yet speak aloud. And in Charleston Harbor he found himself assigned to the Confederate transport steamer Planter, a vessel used to carry supplies, ammunition, and even cannons for the Confederate Army. And while to others, it was just another prison of labor, to Smalls it became something else, an opportunity, a key, a ship that might one day sail him and his family from bondage into liberty. For as the war dragged on and the Confederacy tightened its grip, Smalls quietly studied the routines of the white officers, noting when they came aboard, when they left, when they slept, how they dressed, how they carried themselves. And a plan began to burn within him, reckless, dangerous, a plan that if discovered would mean death, not just for him but for his wife Hannah and their children. Yet in the heart of desperation, courage is often born, and so in May of 1862, when the war was raging and Charleston Harbor bristled with cannons and warships, Smalls made his move, waiting until the white officers left the Planter for the night, leaving only the enslaved crew behind. And in that perilous silence he donned the captain's wide-brimmed hat, wrapped himself in the long coat and took the wheel, the silhouette of authority. And as the first light of dawn crept across the water, he ordered the crew to raise anchor, steam into the harbor, and follow his lead. And so began one of the most daring escapes in American history. For Smalls, a slave, was about to steal a Confederate warship under the very guns of Fort Sumter, and every second was a dance with death. For as they glided through the harbor, he mimicked the captain's posture, standing tall and commanding, signaling to the checkpoints with the secret hand gestures and salutes he had memorized. And at each stop, Confederate guards waved them through, never suspecting that the man at the helm was no master but a slave, no officer but a rebel against slavery itself. And with each checkpoint passed, his heart thundered louder, until at last the open water lay before them, and there, beyond the Confederate guns, loomed the Union blockade, warships that might mistake them for enemies and blast them into splinters before hearing a word of explanation. But Smalls was ready, and as they drew near, he ordered the crew to hoist a white bedsheet his wife had sewn into a flag of surrender. And the Union sailors, peering through their scopes, realized the impossible had happened. A Confederate ship was defecting, and on May 13th, 1862, Robert Smalls delivered the Planter, loaded with Confederate guns, ammunition, and intelligence, straight into Union hands, not only winning freedom for himself, his family, and his crew, but striking a symbolic and strategic blow against the Confederacy, a moment that resounded across the nation. For here was proof that enslaved men were not passive victims, but active agents of their liberation, capable of bravery, strategy, and sacrifice equal to any soldier. And Smalls became a hero overnight, his story spreading through northern newspapers, celebrated by abolitionists, praised by President Abraham Lincoln himself, And soon he was no longer just a fugitive turned free man, but a soldier, a statesman, a leader, serving the Union Navy, piloting ships in combat, risking his life again and again for the cause of freedom. And after the war, when the Confederacy lay in ashes, Smalls did not retreat into obscurity but rose into politics, elected 5 times to the United States Congress, fighting for civil rights, education, and justice for his people, proving that his daring theft was not the end of his journey, but only the beginning. And yet what makes his story reach its climax is not only the audacity of stealing a warship, but the deeper meaning, the message carved into history that a man born in chains could seize the wheel of his fate, that courage could outwit tyranny, that even in the darkest harbor the light of freedom could be found. And though time has often buried such stories beneath layers of myth and neglect, Robert Smalls's legacy endures. For he showed that heroism wears no single face, no single color, that greatness is not granted by birth but claimed by action. And as we remember him now, we hear again the hiss of steam, the creak of wood, the pounding heart of a man disguised as his own oppressor, steering a ship past cannons aimed at his back, daring the impossible, and winning. And so when we speak of legends of the sea of daring escapes and bold captains, let us speak not only of those enshrined in marble, but of Robert Smalls, the slave who stole a Confederate ship whose name deserves to sail forever on the waters of history, reminding us that freedom is never given. It is taken, it is fought for, it is seized in the dead of night by those bold enough to grasp it. And his story, his ride across the harbor, still thunders like waves against the shore, a defiance eternal, a victory unforgettable.